Living comes with both expected and unexpected costs, but retirement is one expense we can actually plan for. However, without proper retirement planning, many individuals still face financial shortfalls after leaving the workforce. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to our respected lecturer. Today, my team and I will be presenting our FIN675 case study on retirement planning, where we examine how effective retirement strategies can be applied to individuals at different stages of life. Retirement planning is essential to ensure a comfortable lifestyle after leaving the workforce. However, it is not a one size fits all approach. Factors such as age, income level, and risk tolerance play a crucial role in shaping an individual's retirement strategy. Our study focuses on three individuals: a young professional, a middle aged individual, and a pre retiree, and analyzes how factors such as age, income, and risk tolerance influence the choice between capital conservation and capital liquidation strategies. Through this analysis, we aim to demonstrate that retirement planning must be personalized, practical, and regularly reviewed to ensure long term financial security. In addition, we recognize that retirement planning is exposed to several risks, including inflation risk, longevity risk, and shortfall risk. These risks are carefully assessed, and tailored recommendations are provided to help each individual mitigate potential financial challenges during retirement.
Hi, my name is Nurfar Kisina. To begin with, Amir Hakim is 30 years old and currently working as private sector executive with 30 years remaining before his target retirement. At this stage of life, financial planning is flexible as he has ample time to benefit from long-term growth and recover from market fluctuations. In terms of personal circumstance, he is single, lives independently in Kuala Lumpur, and maintains a moderate urban lifestyle. He has no major dependents or debt, which gives him a greater financial freedom. As a result, Amir's retirement planning is centered on wealth accumulation and growth rather than preservation, so that he can build a sufficient fund to support his desired lifestyle after retirement. This positions advantage Amir compared to those closer to retirement, as his long investment horizon allows him to take calculated risks and harness the power of compounding. Therefore, his profile highlights the opportunity of starting retirement planning early, using time as his greatest asset. Now, I'll pass it over to Ivan.
I am Ivan and I will be presenting the financial profile of Nurul Ain, who represent the middle-aged individual in our case study. Nurul Ain is 50 years old and works with UNHCR. Since it is an international organization, she does not receive mandatory EPF contributions. So, she makes voluntary EPF saving of 1,000 ringgit per month. She lives with her husband and supports two children who are studying in Canada, which increase her monthly expense. She earns 8,100 ringgit per month and spends about 7,100 ringgit monthly. Her savings include EPF, ASB, gold and insurance-linked investments. She has 10 years left until retirement and has a moderate risk tolerance with the goal of maintaining her lifestyle and support her children after her retirement.
Thank you, Ivan. Next, I'll be presenting the financial profile of our pre-retired case, Ahmad Fauzi. To begin with, Ahmad Fauzi is a 58 years old and currently working as a production manager with only 2 years remaining before retirement. At this stage of life, financial planning becomes far more constrained as there is very limited time to recover from financial shocks or poor investment performance. In terms of personal circumstances, he is married and his spouse operates a small business. However, Ahmad also has existing debt obligation, which places additional strain on his retirement readiness. As a result, Ahmad's retirement planning is centered on preservation and financial stability rather than growth or legacy, so that his income can sustain his day-to-day living needs. This makes Ahmad significantly more vulnerable compared to younger individuals, as his retirement income must be carefully managed to avoid early fund depletion. Therefore, his profile highlights the urgency of careful retirement planning at the pre-retirement stage. With that overview of Ahmad Fauzi's background, I will now pass back to Aisha, who will explain the retirement capital computation methods used in this study.
This slide summarizes how the retirement capital for each individual was computed. The calculations consider factors such as current savings, expected returns, retirement duration, and required annual withdrawals. These projections allow us to determine whether each individual faces a surplus or a funding gap at retirement. The outcomes from these computations form the foundation for selecting the most appropriate retirement strategy, whether it is capital conservation or capital liquidation for each individual.
We explored two methods for calculating Amir's required retirement fund, both accounting for inflation. First, we note that a 2% inflation rate increases Amir's first-year retirement income need from 40,000 ringgit Malaysia to 42,400 ringgit Malaysia. This means his investments must grow faster than inflation to preserve value. Given his 30-year horizon, this is achievable through long-term compounding, increasing savings, and regular portfolio reviews. Now, let's look at the two approaches. Approach 1, capital liquidation method. This method provides an increasing income until the fund is fully depleted at age 80. The required lump sum is Rm 569,888 cents. Approach 2, capital conservation method. This method ensures the funds last forever, preserving purchasing power. The required lump sum is significantly higher, which is Rm 1.06 million. To summarize, with capital liquidations, Amir needs 569,800, while with capital conservations, he needs 1.06 million. The difference reflects whether he wants to spend down the fund or preserve it indefinitely. Given his long time horizon and higher risk tolerance, reaching either goals is realistic. But with disciplined investing, regular saving increases, and periodic reviews.
For the capital liquidation method, the retirement fund is gradually used up until age of 80. Nurul Ain target retirement income is 65,000 ringgit per year with a 6% of interest and 1.64% of inflation over 20 years. Based on this method, the requirement retirement fund is around 897,280 ringgit. This is the minimum amount needed for her to sustain her retirement lifestyle. Next is the capital conservation method. This method preserves the retirement capital and only use the investment returns. Under this approach, Nurul Ain needs around approximately 1.5 million ringgit to maintain her income and keep her capital intact for the future or inheritance. So to compare, the liquidation method requires 897,280 ringgit, while the conservation method requires around 1.5 million ringgit. Nurul Ain personal target of 1.2 million ringgit is between these two amounts. These give her a safety buffers while still allowing her to enjoy retirement and support her children.
Thank you again, Ivan. I will now continue with the retirement capital computation result for Ahmad Fauzi. As shown on this slide, we compare two approaches, the capital liquidation method and the capital conservation method, which are both adjusted for inflation. Under the capital liquidation method, Ahmad requires approximately 971,700 ringgit, assuming his retirement fund is gradually withdrawn and fully depleted over time. In contrast, the capital conservation method requires a much higher amount of 1.9 million ringgit as the principal is preserved and only investment returns are withdrawn. However, Ahmad's current savings amount to only 660,000 ringgit, which means he falls short of the minimum capital liquidation requirement by around 311,000 ringgit 700. As a result, based on his current savings level, this capital conservation method is not realistically achievable for him at this stage. Therefore, his retirement strategy must prioritize meeting basic needs rather than long-term wealth preservation or legacy planning. To address this shortfall, practical options include reducing retirement expenses, generating additional income, or delaying retirement slightly to allow more time for savings accumulation. This clearly highlights the financial vulnerability faced by pre-retirees with insufficient retirement capital. With that, I've completed Ahmad Fauzi's retirement capital analysis. Now I'll pass on to Shupaka, who will discuss the risks and challenges identified in this case study.
Thank you, Shazlin. I will now discuss the various risks and challenges each individual faces, which will impact the retirement security. First, let's look at MRQ. Although it has a long-term horizon, it faces three primary risks. First, inflation risk. Inflation is a silent threat that gradually reduces the purchasing power of army savings. To maintain his lifestyle, his investment must consistently grow faster than the inflation rate, which is projected at 2%. Secondly, longevity risk. With improving healthcare in Malaysia, there is a real possibility that I may outlive his savings. Under the capital liquidation method, his funds are projected to be fully depleted by age 80, leaving him vulnerable if he lives beyond age. And lastly, investment and market risk. Because Army is mostly growth-oriented investments like new trusts and equities inflation, he is exposed to market volatility. For market performance or bad timing during his wealth accumulation phase will significantly increase the pressure on his future savings. Next is Nurul. Being the sandwich generation with children studying abroad, the risks are more complex. First, inflation and currency risk. Not only does local inflation increase daily spending, but she also exposed to currency fluctuations. Since the children are in Canada, a weakening ringgit or higher living costs abroad force her to increase withdrawals, exhausting her capital sooner than later. Secondly, healthcare and insurance. Medical inflation in Malaysia is significantly higher than general inflation, often reaching 10 to 12% annually. As she ages, rising insurance premiums may force her to dip into principal capital, reducing the funds available for daily living and lease. And lastly, longevity and markets. Similar to Amir, living beyond age 80 could result in zero fund balance under the liquidation method. Furthermore, if her core assets like EPF and SP fall below expected 6% return due to market volatility, her reversibility would be at risk. And finally, we look at Ahmad Fauzi, who faces the most immediate challenges due to his 2-year window before retirement. First, civil longevity and inflation risk. Ahmad faces a significant funding shortfall of approximately 311,700 because his current savings generate limited monthly income. There is a high risk of premature funding depletion before he reaches the age of 55. Secondly, healthcare and insurance. This is a critical threat for Ahmad. Upon retirement at age 60, he will lose his employer-sponsored medical insurance. With medical inflation running between 10 and 15%, a single major event will force an emergency withdrawal from his CPF principal, permanently reducing his future retirement income. And lastly, limited recovery time. Unlike Amir, Ahmad has no time to recover from market downturns or financial shocks, making his situation highly vulnerable. So, to address these critical risks, we have developed specific strategies for each individual. I will now pass the floor to Chris to present our recommendations.
Based on our analysis, the recommended investment strategies and withdrawal strategies for all three vary significantly. First, we begin with the young professional Amir Hakim. We believe he must gradually change his aggressive growth strategy to a more balanced portfolio, with the suggested ratio being 60% for growth and 40% for defensive purposes from market downturns. Because he still has a significant amount of time, he may continue relying on EPF as a core retirement asset while focusing on a private retirement scheme to create a more moderate risk source of funds, and to limit his exposure to inflation hedging assets to preserve purchasing power. For his withdrawal strategy at the age of 60, he must apply an income-first withdrawal approach and prioritize dividends and EPF over capital. Additionally, a conservating withdrawal of 3 to 4% per year ensures sustainability in the long term. He must also preserve personal capital to support estate growth, to reach a projected estate value of more than 1.4 million by the end of his expected life expectancy. Thus, Mr. Amir Hakim will be able to balance his income, inflation protection, and wealth preservation using the capital conservation method. Next is the middle-aged individual Nurul Ain, and in these 10 years, she must adopt a balanced growth and preservation strategy to ensure sustainability for her lifestyle in retirement, by targeting an annual return of 6% per year. Additionally, reaping the benefits of EPF and ASB contributions as her core assets would allow for stability and liquidity. She must also maintain a more strategic asset allocation with 60% invested towards EPF and ASB, 20% to her gold commodities, and 20% as cash and liquid assets. Upon retirement, her withdrawal strategy would be to implement a dividend-first bucket strategy for protecting her capital, where she maintains 3 years' worth of income in a high-yield savings account. Furthermore, her remaining assets are to be retained in a growth bucket, such as EPF and gold for continued earnings of 6% annually. Through this strategy, it is expected she will be able to generate RM 1.2 million for retirement funds for balancing income, inflation protection, and legacy support through capital conservation. Finally, we move to the pre-retiree Ahmad Fauzi with only 2 years left before his retirement. It is suggested that he should adopt an aggressive gap closing and capital liquidation strategy for investment strategy due to an RM 311,000 shortfall in funding. He must eliminate RM 85,000 high interest debt and maximize EPF and ASB contributions to stabilize the retirement capital to a reasonable 5.5% return. Furthermore, he must maintain a defensive allocation in his assets, with 80% towards EPF and ASB and 20% as cash. For his withdrawal strategy, he must implement a defensive liquidation bucket strategy with 2 years' worth of income in cash to reduce the sequence of returns risk and retain his remaining funds in EPF to extend fund longevity through compounding. It is also recommended for Ahmad Fauzi to change his lifestyle to fit a monthly spending of RM 1,650 a month to avoid the RM 2,850 shortfall. It is suggested that he may handle this through part-time income or cost reduction. Through such suggestions, it is expected Ahmad Fauzi would be able to preserve financial dignity by stabilizing income and delaying fund exhaustion, despite expected full capital depletion by the age of 85.
In conclusion, this study demonstrates that retirement planning must be personalized according to an individual's life stage, risk tolerance, and financial responsibilities. Amir Hakim, as a young professional, is able to adopt a capital conservation approach with higher risk growth due to his longer investment horizon. Nurul Ain, who is middle-aged, follows a balanced strategy that prioritizes financial stability while supporting her children's education. Meanwhile, Ahmad Fauzi, as a pre-retiree, relies on capital liquidation to meet basic retirement needs due to a significant funding shortfall. Overall, key risks such as inflation, longevity, investment, and health risks highlight the importance of regular review and adaptive retirement planning to ensure long-term financial security. That is all from us. Thank you so much for your time.